And so you ought to be able to find yourself doing one of these things. Maybe you would say, but I'm not very good at innovating a new product. That's okay. Maybe you can innovate a new service. Maybe you can think of new ways of expanding the market where you operate. Or maybe you can think about how to improve processes within your organization. And maybe before I proceed a bit further, let me just lay some principles, not necessarily lay, but maybe re-emphasize. The first principle that I'd like to re-emphasize this morning is the principle of sowing and reaping, giving and receiving, input and output, basic fundamental principle of life. And the second one, I want to say that everybody will not be an entrepreneur. You need to understand this. Now, I know that you may have listened to some motivational speakers who may have suggested that you can't achieve your potential in life unless you start a business. You cannot change the world. The only way to change the world is to build a business. I want to tell you that they were wrong. That is not true. That is so not true. You can change the world from where you are. You can make an impact in this world from where you are. You don't have to resign your job to go start up your company before you can change the world. Everybody will not be an entrepreneur, but everybody and anybody can be an intrapreneur. So before you take that step to follow your passion and resign your job to go start a business, you better be careful. Because passion alone is not enough. You can be passionately hungry. You can be passionately lost. All right? So it's important that you don't make any mistakes. All right? What is important is what value do you bring to the table? All right? And so there is a fixation on titles in Nigeria. Everybody is a CEO. CEO of a company of one. He's the only person. Chief Executive Officer. Now, being a Chief Executive Officer suggests that you have other executive officers. But you don't have any, you don't even have officers. You don't even have staff. And you are CEO, you see. So we need to be careful about it. He said, but what am I going to transfer to my children? What legacy would I give them? I want to build a business so I can transfer something to them. If I work for an organization all my life, what am I going to give them? No, that's where you miss it. What you transfer to your children, the biggest legacy you can give them are values. The values of hard work, discipline, compassion, care, integrity. Those are things that will last them a lifetime. You can transfer a company to them, 5 years down the line, it's shut down. So we need to be focused on what is most important. Now, when we talk about entrepreneurs, I mean, history is replete with entrepreneurs who innovated products that not only changed their organizations, but changed the world. And you see some of those examples on the screen, from the PlayStation to Macintosh to Post-it notes to Amazon Prime. These are all products that were brought into this world by people who were working within an organization. They didn't need to leave to start something to do what they did. I mean, if you look at PlayStation, for example, this was led by a group of employees led by Ken Kutaragi. And you know how far this has gone. When he brought up the idea, initially it was shut down, but ultimately he went on eventually to become the chairman of Sony at some point, and so on. Amazon Prime, the same thing. Today, Amazon Prime grosses over $19 billion. This was an idea brought up by an employee. So where you are within that organization, there is a lot, so much that you can do. Now, innovation drives wealth. But I sat down to think, so what drives innovation? Where does innovation come from? Because sometimes people say, I'm not a very creative person. Not exactly true. There's something that drives innovation. And I've come to the conclusion that all of innovation from ancient history to date, all of it is founded on one word. All innovation is predicated, is grounded in this one word. And that word is the word care. C-A-R-E, care. It is care that drives you to think of new ways of making life better for this world. It is care that motivated the person who thought people are walking distances to get to several towns and to their farms. How do we make this easier for them? How do we move people from one point to the other in an easier fashion? That's care. And that's how the bicycle came into being. Well, the bicycle was good, but it wasn't good enough. How do we move more people? Because you can only pedal so long a distance. How do we move more people in an easier way? The car came to be. And from there, we moved on to the aeroplanes. Because all of that is driven by care. You have a 10-story building, and people have to climb all the way up. And somebody's thinking, how do we make this easier for people? You bring in the elevator. That innovation comes. But it's founded from care. That's where it comes from. That's where it comes from. You go to the bank, for example, today. Many years ago, some of you may not relate, some of you might be Gen Zs, but many years ago, there was a time you had to get a teller, you had to get a ticket to wait your turn before you could take your money from the bank. And you spend hours in the bank. But when you care about that, you say, how do we make this easier for people? So today you can use your ATM card and you make withdrawals. You can transfer in a minute. All of that was driven by care. And so the challenge before us as employees is then I ask you, how much do you care? How much do you care about your organization? You're not going to be able to innovate anything unless you truly care about yourself. Now I'm talking about your business. You have to literally take the business of the company you work for as though it were yours. You take it upon your head. Now, and it's in different forms. Like I said, you could be talking about fixing processes. Sometimes there's a way you take on the business of the organization. And people ask you, what's your own self? Is this your father's business? Now, that's where the problem is. You see, the person who's asking that question doesn't understand. There's a quote that has shaped my perspective to work for many years. I came across that quote many years ago. And it kind of governs my approach to work. And that's the quote. That quote says, if you're not faithful in what is another man's business, who's going to give you your own? Very powerful, profound statement. If you don't treat another man's company, another man's business, as though it were yours, you're not going to have yours. And it ties back to the first principle I laid today, the principle of giving and receiving. Every time you come to work, you're sowing a seed, and it will surely come back to you. So as much as you have your dreams and visions of building your own enterprise and your own company, how you engage today in another man's business will determine how far your business will go. It's just as simple as that. And that quote is from the Bible, by the way. Okay? So we have to show more care. We don't have too many caring employees. We have hardworking employees, but we have very few caring employees who care about the business. And it's even in little things. You're in the office, somebody sends stuff to the printer, and it's printing tons and tons of paper. Waste. And you just walk by. It doesn't touch you. You lack care. Because it's not yours. It's not your money. I audited for many years, and during the course of my audit, sometimes you audit people's expenses. If you see what they spend on food with company money, you wonder if it's a medical condition. How can one person eat all of this? Would you spend your money this way? You see, because people lack care about the business, so there's no way you're going to be able to innovate and think of new ways of doing things. And so the cycle of wealth, what I call the cycle of wealth, it begins with care. When you show care, thoughts start to come to your mind. You spend time to think about how to move this organization forward, how to build value. And in the process of that thinking, innovation comes. Ideas, concepts come to you. And that is where wealth is now generated. And so, I want to ask you a few questions this morning. First question I want to ask you is, what do you contribute to your organization's bottom line? How much do you contribute? And do you even know what bottom line is? Okay, I'll change the slides by myself. Don't worry, I'll be fine. But leave it there. That's fine. That is an organization's P&L, profit and loss account. Okay, profit basically is revenue minus cost. Keeping it simply. Don't mind accountants. We like to make things complex. It's not more complex than this. So let me tell you a secret. This is between you and I. Okay, don't tell anybody. We make the P&L very complex so that you will not understand it as accountants, so that you continue to pay us to be relevant, okay? But really, your profit is revenue minus cost. So the only way to grow profit is either you're increasing your revenue or you reduce your cost. As simple as that. And so what is your contribution to any of these lines? How many of you even know how well your business is doing? How many of you have read your business annual financial statement? When last did you see it? Or you could not be bothered? You see, we are not concerned about the financial well-being of the organization. You do not care. But 25th of the month, we don't miss that one. That alert must drop. If it doesn't drop, you start saluting in the office. You see, but you see, and I said, a lot of employees do not care. A lot of employees care about their jobs. A lot of employees care about job security. Only very few care about business longevity. And yet, it is in the longevity of the business that your career can be assured. But he said, what's my own? If the business closes down, I'm off to the next one. See, that's the people Rolake called, what do you call them? People that shop from job to job. Exactly. Briefcase employees, you're moving to the next. You know, I have one unconscious bias, let me just be honest. And maybe it's conscious now because I know. When I'm hiring people and I look at your CV, 5 years, you have worked for 4 companies. I'm worried. To be honest, I'm worried. Because it tells me something. Why are you moving up and down? Not that it's totally wrong, okay? But it concerns me because there must be a reason why. Maybe you're not sure what you're looking for, or you just don't have the patience. Somebody upset you there and you've resigned, you've gone. No staying power, no character built. I can't deal with a toxic environment. Really? Really? Especially this new generation. Very low tolerance for anything. Positive vibes only. Only. In which world? What are you talking about? You've got to have negative vibes. How are you going to build character? You see, I can't, my mental health. No. You've got to build resilience. You've got to build character and stop jumping around. Okay? And so, this is what you should ask yourself. What do I contribute? And that takes me to what I call the Value Contribution Index, which is basically a measure of how much you contribute to an organization. And the next question I ask is, are you an NVC or an NVT? What do we mean by NVC? NVC basically means a net value contributor. And an NVT is a net value taker. Are you contributing more to the organization than you're taking from it? When you contribute more than you're taking, you're an NVC. But when you're taking more than you're giving, you're an NVT. There is a value exchange that goes on in the office every day. Each day you come to work, value is being exchanged. You're giving and you're receiving. The challenge is, are you giving more or are you taking more than you're giving? And our target should be to give more, because the giver will always be superior to the taker. All right? So you give more. So you ask yourself, am I giving enough to justify even what I'm taking? By the time some of you answer that question, you might be refunding some of your salary. You know that you owe the organization. All right? And it's a call to a mindset shift. Moving from being an employee to an entrepreneur. You know, this is about deploying our minds. The biggest, you know, the human resource we have within an organization is so powerful. And the main capital that is locked up in organizations is the ability of human beings to think. But we are not challenging ourselves enough. We are not extracting that value enough. It's not about what you do on a daily basis. It's about the capacity of the individual to think new thoughts. We are not stimulating that thinking enough in our organizations. So we are sitting with huge capital. You realize that there are some problems organizations are going through. The solutions lie within the employees in that organization. And they may not be senior people. They might be junior people sitting somewhere. They have the solutions. But because they haven't been stimulated enough, you're not able to extract that value. When you have 500 people in an organization, can you imagine the mastermind that exists there? The capacity of people to think new things. But we're not tapping. And this is a challenge to human resource HR. HR needs to transition from just being human resource management to human resource optimization. How do we milk the value that we have with us? How do we unlock that capital? How do we challenge people to start thinking and applying themselves to finding solutions to what the organization is facing? So we begin that transition to becoming entrepreneurs. How do you do that? First thing, think growth. Think growth. How do we grow this business? How do we expand this business? And you can get ideas even from the streets. Bring those ideas. No idea is silly. Bring those ideas, but think about growth. Think solutions. There are so many problems. Some people are experts in problem analytics. They can define the problem. They can talk about the problem. They can tell you 100 ways it will not work. What about the solution? We need more solutions than analyzing the problems. And then you can also engage entrepreneurs. Get closer to entrepreneurs so you understand how they reason and you can think like an entrepreneur who has an ownership mindset. The corporates also, we have a role to play as organizations to drive critical thinking and innovation within our organizations. What can we do as organizations? Encourage collaboration. Collaboration enables people from different units to come together to share ideas. Encourage that. Let's have more of those conversations. Encourage critical thinking. I understand, I was going to ask you earlier, but I understand in Google at some point they gave 20% of time to people to just work on something outside of your normal jobs. Critical thinking. We need to drive that. Reward and recognition. Reward those who bring up new ideas, fresh ideas on how to take the business forward. Set up competitions. A competition of ideas on how we solve the problems within the organization and make sure it's rewarded so people are motivated to do the same. Provide the resources and support in terms of time and finance that people need. This is so important because you know why? About 88% of companies that were on Fortune 500 about 50 years ago are no longer there. They've died because they did not innovate to move into the future. So this is why this is so important for us to make sure we're driving those conversations within all of our organizations. And so I want to start bringing this to a close. There's a question that we always ask, which is an important question. And we ask the question, what do you bring to the table? How many of you have heard that question? It's a very common question. What do you bring to the table? It's a very important question because it challenges us to ask what contributions we're bringing. But I think there's an even more important question, which we're not asking, and we should ask. And that question is, who brought the table? brought the table. What you bring to the table suggests that there's a table in the first place. But who brought the table? That's when you begin to think like an entrepreneur. Because that table is the platform where all of us bring our skills and contribute to growing wealth. But if we had more tables, if we could expand that table, then we will multiply the wealth. And that's what we should start thinking about, beyond what we bring to the table. And so I conclude again by saying that care is the bedrock of all innovation. It's driven by care. It's not enough to just do hard work. Do you care enough about the business you work for? Do you take it as though it were yours? Do you care enough? How much do you contribute to your organization's bottom line? Do you know what your organization's bottom line is? Are you an NVC or are you an NVT? As we begin to ask ourselves these questions, what happens is our mindsets begin to shift. We move from focusing on human resource management to human resource optimization. And we start to think like intrapreneurs that want to grow wealth for our organizations. And beyond asking, what do you bring to the table? We move from being table servers to becoming table makers. It's been a great honor sharing with you this morning. And thank you for listening. Thank you.